There's one vital resource that makes the world go round in the future, and unlike oil, only a few companies will be able to provide it. Microchips. They're the brains of almost every electrical device you use. Even though they're built on a base of silicon, which is made out of commonly found silica sand, these small pieces of tech have become a sought-after resource. What we want to find out today is if these things are so damned important to the future of mankind, how come everyone isn't making them? Why do all the chips, and certainly all the best chips, seem to be concentrated in only a few countries? Even the super wealthy, ultra-modern US and China are not on the top of the world where chips are concerned. And how will these chips give the countries who have them the upper hand? So what's going on? In 2022, a New Statesman headline read, "The future world order will be decided by the war over semiconductors, chips." The subheading mentioned Taiwan because Taiwan, said the article, is the global leader in microchip manufacture. No offense to Taiwan, but it's hardly the world's superpower. It wasn't that long ago that if you asked the average American about Taiwan, they'd say, "Tai what?" They'd probably say it has nice beaches and a famous brutal martial art, mixing it up with Thailand. But not now. Everyone knows about Taiwan, a giant in its own right. Taiwan is on the lips of folks that probably didn't long ago even know what language they spoke. By the way, it's Mandarin Chinese. The same people probably now understand that the official name is the Republic of China, and they know that China says Taiwan is just a province of China and that it should be ruled by the Chinese Communist Party. This is all very important to know for the purpose of today's show. The USA doesn't even recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation. Not officially, as most other nations do not. But if you ever go to Taiwan and tell people they're Chinese, expect a plate of stinky tofu shoved into your face. Taiwan, they'll say, is Taiwan. Right now, if you go to the U.S. Department of State's website, you can find out what the U.S. officially thinks about Taiwan. You'll read, "Though the United States does not have a diplomatic relationship with Taiwan, we have a robust unofficial relationship. The United States and Taiwan share similar values, deep commercial and economic links, and strong people-to-people ties, which form the bedrock of our friendship and serve as the impetus for expanding U.S. engagement with Taiwan." You can forget most of that paragraph and focus on the important and most true part, which contain the words deep commercial and economic links. Taiwan has stuff that the US wants, and Taiwan knows that, so it can talk about a strong people-to-people tie and friendship while taking advantage of the economic and perhaps military support of the US. If you think we sound cynical, just remember that international relations aren't generally built on love or friendship. It's just the way the world works. If you don't believe us, read history books about how friendly nations who once had strong ties became arch enemies willing to blow each other to smithereens when something happened that affected their economic security. Friendships on a global scale don't normally last. And for now, as Taiwan is helping the US in regards to its economic security, they are like two peas in a pod. The only reason for this is Taiwan, as we just said, is the global leader in microchip manufacture. The same goes for China. Taiwan is just a cog in its economic machine. They are very big economic trading partners, not friends in any sense of the word. Right now, Taiwan is sitting in the middle of a technological arms race that has turned into a trade war only because it's so good at making those chips we told you will help countries gain the upper hand in the world. In 2022, Taiwan made about 65% of the world's microchips and nearly 90% of the most advanced chips. Those advanced ones are needed for all the latest AI advancements, including lots of tools associated with the military. Low-end chips might just ensure your washing machine spins around in an hour's cycle. Not all chips are born equal, but all are needed. China and the US can make their own chips right now, but when it comes to the mass production of the most advanced chips, Taiwan has left them in the mud. South Korea, Japan, and some parts of Europe can make top chips, but they're all way behind Taiwan. China produces about 5% of the world's chips, and the US somewhere from 10 to 12%, so of course they're both heavily reliant on Taiwan as they ratchet up the trade war and people talk about a battle between the superpowers sometime in the future. Some of our viewers in the US and maybe even China might be now thinking, wait a minute, why did we let ourselves get so far behind when we knew that advanced microchips would be one of the most important commodities on planet Earth? Imagine if Taiwan suddenly snubbed China or the US, leaving the other country behind in terms of the technological arms race. How irresponsible of China and the US to let Taiwan get so far out in front. Actually, the US used to be the pioneer of chip technology. How do you think we got the name Silicon Valley? Chips are made out of silicon, or at least they usually are. The most simple explanation of how the US fell behind is that it sat on its laurels as countries in Asia went to chip development overdrive. The governments of Taiwan and South Korea invested large amounts of money into chip development and manufacturing, allowing the companies in those countries to leap over the US. But another reason is those nations pay lower wages. Americans are proud of their liberal democracy and how this form of government puts so much emphasis on rights. But when you have fewer rights, you can work people harder for less money. Producing chips is incredibly expensive, and it takes a lot of people who you have to pay to work those long hours. In short, this was more suited to Asian nations than to the US. Their chip plants operate at a much lower cost, so it only makes sense that they were able to make that leapfrog maneuver. Meanwhile, American companies were not being helped by the government. The Americans, for the most part, thought, okay, let's rely on Asia for chips, and we can spend more of our time on developing and designing chips, not actually manufacturing them. We don't need to produce them, they said. That hasn't worked out so well, not for now at least. There's a chip shortage just as technological advances are through the roof. There's what people are calling a global chip crunch, and the US and China know that this is no time to be without those precious objects. This is why the US's chip giant Intel just said it's investing a cool $20 billion to open up a production plant in Arizona, and later maybe one in Ohio, and then another in Germany. This is not an overnight thing. The Arizona plant might only start producing chips in 2025. The one in Germany that Intel calls a mega site, in a place called Silicon Junction, will only be ready in 2027. Intel said it might pile in a ton more money, around $13 billion, into a foundry in every American tech company's favorite low-tax haven, Ireland. Americans might complain about tech giants' tax-paying habits, but if you want to compete with China, you gotta cut some corners. At the same time, the EU just said it would deal with the chip shortage by making investments of $49 billion under what it calls the EU Chips Act. Europe is also now regretting the day it put too many eggs in too few baskets and became reliant on Asia for chips. As we said in the Microchip War Show, forget about Russia. China is the US's biggest enemy, so the US and its allies throughout Europe cannot be short of chips that power the world's most advanced war machines. President Biden knows this, which is why under him, the US pulled some sanctions out of thin air and demanded American companies stop selling chips or anything that's used in the production of chips to China. As the great scramble for microchips gets into gear, the US just kicked China in the balls as it took its first step over the starting line. This below-the-belt move happened in conjunction with Biden announcing the CHIPS Act to Congress, a package containing $52 billion. You'd think with all these billions the US would be out in front. It's not. As you know, for many years, Asian governments have been pumping billions into their chip industries. The only good news is that China still has been somewhat left behind, also because of their reliance on Taiwan. These days, Intel has spent crazy money designing machines that can make smaller components that can do amazing things. Intel is proud of its shrinking work, but guess what? It's still behind the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, in terms of building high-tech chips. Intel wants to catch up, but it's starting from a very long way behind. To get to Taiwan's level, we're talking about spending many billions of dollars. The machinery for processing steps needed to fabricate the chips is really expensive. These factories, aka fabs, need giant machines that'll go through thousands of steps to process big wafers that contain lots of individual chips. These fabs also have to be state-of-the-art regarding their construction. Mere dust or vibrations can ruin the very expensive chip wafers. Ask Taiwan. It's been doing it for ages, better than Intel has. TSMC is well ahead in this regard. It can make things faster and make them better. This is the reason why so few countries and companies rule the roost where chips are concerned. Other nations can't afford to get going and then try to catch up with the leaders. The only reason the US and Europe are concerned is the possibility of China out-chipping them and having much more advanced consumer products and much better weapons tech. They have no choice but to catch up, or at least that's the way they see it. Most nations, of course, couldn't care less about getting involved with this arms race. It would be too expensive for most. And let's face it, who in their right mind would want to get involved in an arms race where the race's competitors are already out of their league? Seriously, who could afford to spend billions to play catch-up with veterans? Well, China can, you might be thinking. But remember that China isn't exactly a newbie on the chip scene. Sure, last year it spent close to $80 billion on chips from TSMC alone, 15% more than it spent in 2021. But China right now, like the US and Europe, wants to be more self-sufficient. The Chinese government just announced it was spending $143 billion on new chip manufacturing packages, which dwarfs the US and European expenditure. But like the US and Europe, China's chip plants won't be ready for a long time. Right now, the great chip race is on just as Taiwan sits back saying, "Bring it on," and in the meantime, hand us your money. it's holding some good cards right now, as the US and China are moving uncomfortably in their seats on the world stage. Who will come out on top is anyone's guess, but there's a very good chance it'll be China. With its notoriously cheap labor, not just to run plants but to build them, companies such as Huawei and SMIC might leave Intel in the dust. But who knows? China might have the labor force and cheaper building materials, but brilliant minds are born out of the US's system of democracy. Freedom is important to where science is concerned. The experts say there's also every chance no one will catch up to Taiwan since it's already so far ahead. Still, the US and China will continue to extend their influence over the island nation, making sure their demand of high-quality chips is met. South Korea, with Samsung and SK Hynix, is also in the race, and Japan is a contender too, if not an outsider. Europe might be left behind, but it also has some very advanced chip companies in Germany and Switzerland. The Netherlands is home to ASML Holding, which owns what are called lithography systems. These are used to pattern in the circuits in high-tech chips, and ASML Holding is the world leader, making chips on what some experts say is a new level. In layman's terms, these machines can make smaller and more compact chips that hold more power. In conclusion, it would be too expensive for companies elsewhere to join this race without the infrastructure to make the chips. They don't have the machines, nor do they have the expertise and the all-important patents. Making microchips is kind of like space travel. It's literally and figuratively difficult to get off the ground. Just as every nation on Earth doesn't have ambitions to send rockets to Mars, they don't fool themselves into thinking they can sit at the chip table with the big guns. Now you need to watch how US just paralyzed Chinese manufacturing overnight. Or here's some good news: why 2023 will be the best year ever.